Welcome, welcome, welcome back to another episode of Excuse Me, Doctor. I want to welcome each and every one of you in my Be Health Empowered family, my newbies. You all, I want to introduce myself. If you don't know me, I am Dr. Melissa Clark, also known as Dr. Mel. And we are here every week on Excuse Me, Doctor to bring you the information that you need to make wise health decisions for yourself, for your family, and for your entire community. So thank you for tuning in on whatever platform you are on, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Sirius XM, HUR Voices, Sirius 141. Wherever you are listening, you are welcome here. And there's a couple things I want to ask of you. Number one is if you are online on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're on Facebook, please hit that like button. And this is really key because we are here to answer your questions and to hear what's on your mind. We really need you to put anything that's on your mind in the chat to get answered because, like I said, that's why we're here, to give you the information that you need. So with all that out of the way, let us get into creating an amazing week with my co-hosts and all the information that we have to bring you. And they are, of course, Mr. Wayne Bruce and Miss Bria Good. Thank y'all for being here.
Hey.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Dwayne. I'm great. How are you, Dr. Mel? What's going on
Doing
with you?
good. Doing good. Happy to be here for another week.
Yes. Happy first day of spring. That's today,
I
right?
know. Yes, it is.
Spring already?
No more winter
Yes.
time. I mean, it might feel like it
Allegedly.
in some places, but cherry blossoms are here, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it was cold here in Atlanta. It was 20 something degrees this morning.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
Same here.
I just didn't go out.
Well, some people get to sleep in. Some people have to go out early in the morning.
It's the privilege.
I was in the sleep-in category.
I'm in early in the morning. Early Monday morning. So I'm excited about today's show, Dr. Mel.
Yeah. Y'all know what it's about, right?
We talking about money, 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 money. I don't know the rest of the song. Money.
That's right. You got it.
Some people.
Because money can drive some people out of their minds.
Talk about it. Yeah. Oh, okay. My old
right.
OJs.
Well, the OJs sang about it in 1973, but it's still true today. People's overall health. Right. Okay, sure. Anyway, our overall health and peace of mind is linked to our relationship to money. I want to be clear, we talk about our relationship to money, not whether we have it or not. But where do we get our ideas about money and our relationship to it? Is there trauma associated with us and our relationship to money? And can it be healed so that we can manage the relationship differently? So we're going to get into all of that tonight with these two incredible experts we have lined up later in the show. So stay tuned and share with anybody. Yes. Anybody who you think this applies to. And I know you know somebody who this applies to.
All my friends,
everybody
they just talk about money. I mean,
exactly.
Especially the couples, the married people. That's like the number one thing.
It can break up relationships.
And the single 20-somethings, we're struggling. We need that financial literacy.
Yeah. So stay tuned because it is going to be on and popping later in the show.
Fantastic. But before we do, we have to recap all the health and wellness news of the week. Isn't that right, Dr. Mel?
That's right. Let's get it on.
Here we go. So, Dr. Mel, I like to start this one off, man. This is the week in health disparities. Would you say? I mean, we got PTSD is apparently not colorblind in the military.
Surprise.
Yes. Exactly. Surprise. Well, there's a newly surfaced 2017 Internal Veterans Affairs report that showed that Black veterans were more often denied benefits for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as compared to their white counterparts. And this came out because there's a lawsuit going on about this very thing. And so this internal memo came to light. And what it did was it crunched financial data, medical financial data from 2011 to 2016, and it showed that Black vets who were seeking disability benefits for PTSD were denied 57% of the time as compared to 43% for white veterans.
I read about that. It all came to light because of a lawsuit filed by an advocacy group for Black vets. Where are all my vets out there? Where I need to see y'all show up.
See in the chat.
I mean, what really disturbs me, makes me mad, is the military continues to aggressively recruit young Black people from our neighborhoods, more aggressive than they do in other neighborhoods. I mean,
right.
And then they
not
deny
only
us benefits on the back.
Exactly. And then also Black Vietnam veterans, turns out there was a study that showed that they had higher rates of PTSD than white. So there's a disproportionate amount of PTSD among Black veterans, probably because they saw combat more than their white counterparts. So we're going to keep a really close eye on this. And I know that the VA is now under pressure to address these disparities in race when it comes to benefits.
We're gonna have to have a segment where we just deal with that and talk to our
veterans,
like our good friend Tracy Walls, like my longtime friend from junior high school.
Wow,
she's a longtime veteran and served our country with honor.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't have been a long time because you were born after 1973, right?
So it was after 1973.
I'm just saying, right?
We was in high school in the 90s.
Just saying. So let's talk about what's the big deal with medication-induced abortions. And I do a lot of research on this, and I know a little bit familiar with this, but let's talk a little bit about it for those who don't know what's going on around medication abortion.
Sure. Well, as you know, Bria, medications are used in the majority of pregnancy terminations that happen in the United States. And these medications can be obtained through telemedicine consults online, and then they get mailed to your house. So this is driving conservatives bananas, because despite outlawing abortion and putting severe restrictions on it in certain states, people can get around it by using these medications and obtaining them in the mail. And so there are two medications, one that ends pregnancy, and then the second that causes uterine contractions and cramping in order to induce a miscarriage, to make the uterus empty itself. So those are the two medications that are involved.
Yeah, and one thing to really remember, of course, is that because of Roe versus Wade being overturned, 13 states already outlaw abortion completely, which includes medication abortion, on top of the fact that a lot of states already have restrictions on telemedicine for medication abortion.
Absolutely. And now we know that Wyoming just became the first state to ban use of these medications. If you prescribe them, you can go to prison for 6 months. And then as we speak in Texas, there's a conservative federal judge who's ruling whether medication-induced abortions are safe and lawful, even though they're FDA approved, right? The FDA says that the medication is already safe. So if this really continues, this trend of outlawing medications, pregnancy termination is going to be much more dangerous and risky to the health of women.
Right. No one's going to be able to access abortions at all.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, let's, that's an incredible topic, but I want to get into a bit of good news today. The good news is for people who are on insulin. Where are my diabetics? The cost of insulin is going down, Dr. Mills. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So the Inflation Reduction Act capped out-of-pocket costs for insulin at $35 a month, but it only did it for people on Medicare. So, those are seniors, basically. So there was already a $35 a month cap for people without insurance, but now the 3 leading insulin producers in America now have agreed to put this cap on for people who do have insurance outside of Medicare. So, your Aetnas, your Cignas, your Medicaid, and, all the other insurances, right? And this is a big deal because there are about almost 8.5 million people in the United States who are diabetic and rely on insulin and have been having to maybe even skip doses because it was just the price was getting out of control. So this is a huge thing, and it's good news for a change.
That's awesome. This is so good to hear.
That's some good
Yep.
news.
And so, with our last topic for the recap of the week, the Ozempic is getting a little bit real. It's getting real popular, and we talked a little bit about this last week. For those who weren't able to tune into last week, but definitely go back and watch because we talked about medical tourism. But let's get into this new kit. Like, what's going on with this?
Yeah, so that conversation was really eye-opening to me because our guest, who is in the post-surgical care business, so after you've had cosmetic surgery, she helps you to heal appropriately. And she was talking about all her clients were getting the Ozempic kit off the telemedicine, basically online, and going doing it. But then it turns out that all these people, because it's so popular for weight loss, right? And these people using it for this non-FDA approved indication, it turns out that the people that really need it, people with diabetes, can't get it. So it's so popular that use has shot up by 111% just since last year. And so
Wow.
people that legitimately need it to just out here trying to control their blood sugar can't get it. So I would suggest that y'all cease and desist if you don't have a legitimate indication.
Wow, we lost Bree. We lost Bree.
I know.
Where'd she
She'll
go?
be
It's
back.
just a big black thing over there. She's gonna come back.
Oh no,
Let-
we're gonna have to figure out, uh her coming back. I'm sure she will though. There she is. See? The
Look,
magic of the
technology is
internet.
not my friend.
Right.
So
the
sorry, y'all.
interwebs.
I'm
Don't
back.
worry
That's
about
all
it.
right.
Interwebs. They're playing tricks on us.
So wow, it is that time, right?
You know what time it is. It's time for the
weekly debunk. Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
So I came back right in time to tell y'all that another
You
Twitter
did.
finger family member is on the loose. So Taylor Twitter fingers came to me and she texted me saying, I'm so tired of my sister's excuses and having to clean up her mess because of her drinking. Just like she started drinking, she can choose to stop and quit messing up my life. Well, Dr. Mel, I thought I'd bring it to you because it seems a little bit more than just regular drinking. So, could you tell a little bit to Taylor Twitter fingers what might be going on?
Yeah, and I'm sorry for what Taylor and her sister is going through. This is something that affects millions of families and messes up a lot of relationships. But I think what Taylor is saying, she's falling into this myth that addiction is a choice that you just unchoose. It's an idea that is popularized by, TV and movies that, addicts hit quote unquote rock bottom and then turn their life around by sheer willpower. But these are just stories that portray substance use disorders as like a simple choice or a moral failing. You can just choose to quit like you chose to start. But it's faulty logic and it really oversimplifies a very complicated biological process. So let's break it down. The first thing is nobody ever chooses addiction for themselves. Over
Mhm.
time, the more that you use that substance or a substance, it begins to change the way that your brain works. And once the brain is changed, the person is compelled to get more and use more of the substance, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cocaine, or if it's not a substance, gambling or sex addiction, for example. And they continue to have to get more and more and more, even in the face of it obviously destroying their relationships, their health, or their work life. The other thing is you can't go it alone. Mental and physical support is needed. So people who just think that simple abstinence is the way to go without the necessary mental and physical health care in place to support you often return within months or even days to using again. So doctors can prescribe medication to help support quitting depending on the substance. For example, smoking, opioids, and alcohol all have medications that can help. And then there's mental health counseling, behavior modification techniques, hypnosis, acupuncture, 12-step programs. and other social supports that are really necessary over the long term to make treatment of addiction successful. And then finally, if you're affected by loved ones with a substance use disorder problem, you should also seek help for yourself. And for alcohol, specifically for Taylor, Al Anon is a group for people who are worried about and affected by their loved ones who are abusing alcohol. So that's, you can find help at alanon.org. So please, tweet that back to her. That might be helpful.
Oh, well, we need to show everybody a little grace now. It's not that easy.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you all for the recap, the
Yes.
debunk. We are going to be seeing you back very shortly. But right now, we are going to go into our show for tonight. At Excuse Me Doctor, we are dedicated to empowering you when it comes to your health. But can you really be fully healthy if you're not empowered when it comes to your wealth? And we're talking about money, your relationship to it. There was a 2016 survey that showed money is the main source of stress for adults. What kind of trauma issues do we have around money? How does it affect our health? And how can we start to heal? We have two amazing guests who are going to walk us through from different perspectives. Our first is Jaqee Cooke MBA. She's certified in the trauma of money and is an accredited financial counselor working with clients on their financial well-being by exploring how decisions are developed and made around finances. Welcome, Jaqee. So happy to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Mel. I am very excited to be here tonight and talking about this subject.
Absolutely. Can't wait to hear from you. But first, we are going to introduce Dr. Jonathan Shepherd. He's an award-winning, board-certified psychiatrist of children, adolescents, and adults. He was named top doctor in psychiatry and is also a sought-after motivational speaker. He's also president of the board of the Black Mental Health Alliance. Thank you so much, Dr. Shepherd, for joining us.
Yes, good evening. Dr. Mel, it is so exciting to be with you and your audience today.
Wonderful. Well, let's just get into it. I'm going to start with you, Jaqee. How does our mindset around money develop? What's the best case scenario?
Well, our money mindset, or money scripts, as they're also called, are these underlying beliefs and assumptions that are typically only partially true. And they're often developed in childhood. And they happen typically because of financial flashpoints that occur early on. Or there can be a series of events that are associated with money. And these events are so powerful that they last until adulthood. Now, our money stories also can be passed down through generations or within families and cultures and shape our financial behaviors. So, all of these things, society, families, play a significant role. But most importantly, our money mindset comes typically from our parents.
Mm-hmm.
And unless dealt with early, these can manifest in emotional problems and dysfunctional relationships with money.
Yes, I can vouch for having a strict Jamaican dad who said, you Americans, you just take money for granted, right? So explain to me, I've heard this term financial trauma. What does that mean in light of what you're speaking about now and our money mindset?
Yeah, so financial trauma is a negative impact or financial loss that can occur in your life. And this financial event imprints the person. So if you're a child and you witness your parents going through bankruptcy, losing a job, having a pay cut, anything that's significant, and they don't know the whole story, that can result both in financial trauma for the child as well as for the parent.
Yeah, no, I get that. Okay. So, Dr. Shepherd, we hear the term trauma, we hear the term PTSD. We just had a story about PTSD and veterans. Can you define what those are for us so that we understand everybody's on the same page when it comes to what those mean?
Absolutely. So trauma is when a person has been exposed to an experience or experience has exposed them to death or a near-death experience. Some type of injury may have occurred. It doesn't necessarily have to be even a physical. It could be even a mental experience where there was just even the threat, something that was life-threatening that could have changed your life, impacted your life. And so that's the definition for trauma. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a bona fide diagnosis, disorder, mental illness, if you would. It stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's a cadre of symptoms. And so what happens is when a person has post-traumatic stress disorder, there's an array of symptoms. I don't want to go through a laundry list. That's not what we want to do here today. I'll just hit some highlights. You will have a person who has been exposed to this injury. Again, it may be physical, it may be something emotional, it may be something that was mental. And so when that happens is you have hypersensitivity that could occur where that means that if someone even resembles or you hear a sound, and I say resemble, you could be a sight or it could be sound, it could even be a smell. Smell is huge for people who have post-traumatic stress disorder because a smell would take you back to that experience that was life-threatening for you. There is a hyperarousal that could occur, cognition where anxiety or depression. And when you use the word disorder, that means that you're no longer functioning properly. So you can have a life-threatening experience. And I want the audience to hear this. You can have something that could challenge you to where your life could have been taken, but you don't have the disorder. The disorder means that you're no longer able to function properly. So that's very important to put at the end of that.
That functioning piece. Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down for us. So then when we talk about poverty, children growing up in poverty or having one of those experiences, Jaqee, that you mentioned, how can that then, what are some things that can then result in financial trauma and maybe even financial PTSD?
Well, because they've experienced poverty, they do have certain scripts, and those scripts result in behaviors. So, because money is tied to survival, it's something that we're dealing with every day. And if you grow up in poverty and you're going to behave a certain way, or there's a potential for you to behave a certain way, and that leads you to certain financial behaviors that manifest in scarcity, where you believe you don't have enough. So your mind is telling you don't have enough, but you may actually be fine. It may result in overspending when you know that's not good for you. It may result in hoarding, and these are all medically defined disorders. So that what you experience, if left untreated, can change your financial behaviors to impact you in a disordered way, which does ultimately affect your financial well-being.
Got it. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be linked to poverty, right? There are other
Oh,
circumstances that could lead to financial trauma.
absolutely. Absolutely. There can be people who have plenty of money, and maybe they were in a situation where there was a divorce and they saw their parents go through some dysfunction, and they developed a financial script based on that divorce where they may believe they're not going to have enough. So it's not poverty.
Got it.
For
Okay.
example, in my case, my father was audited, which changed what college I went to. On the outside, it didn't look like a big trauma, but in the mind of an undeveloped mind, it was a big thing. It changed where I went to school, and it also changed what I majored in.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay. Which was?
It changed. I had no interest in finance, but because I saw what was happening with my parents, I was determined not to be impacted by my lack of financial knowledge. So I majored in finance, not from interest, but from really a self-protective perspective.
Interesting. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Because I know, I'm sure that there are many examples of things that we've experienced from our relationship with money that have affected our decision making down the line. Once you get into this, well, let me ask you, does trauma and PTSD specifically change the brain and how we make decisions, Dr. Shepherd?
Oh, absolutely. You just heard a perfect example right there. It changed the course of someone's trajectory in college. I mean, you set that up so well, because one of the pieces of PTSD is avoidance. So when you talk about avoidance, you're going to avoid that stressor that caused that life-altering experience. So if you are now experiencing trauma in your finances because of a death, that's huge. You were expecting someone to die at such a young age, or an accident, and you don't even have to necessarily bury the person. Just the fact that they're no longer able to work, they're no longer able to contribute to the family like they used to. And we see so much of that since the pandemic started, and now we're in the third year of it. I mean, it's just been amazing how our minds have been affected by that. We're more anxious. I mean, literally, we see a bill come in the mail and we like, oh my God, don't show that to me. We'll go hide it.
Right.
We'll go put it somewhere and say, it'll go take care of itself. I've seen when people do that. I'm like, it's still here. And we'll get so anxious. We'll even get aggressive or angry about it. Imagine that when somebody calls and tells you you owe this amount of money, and you go off, and the person on the other end like, I'm not even the person who
right. I'm just doing my job.
Absolutely. So you talk about how those financial experiences affects your mind and body, your blood pressure. You'll experience high blood pressure, hypertension. You'll experience those aches and pains, those headaches. And if you're not careful, you'll end up having a stroke. You end up having even a heart attack, because you've allowed yourself to remain in a chronic state of stress. Anytime that you find yourself in a chronic state of stress, you're more susceptible to infections. You're not able to fight off the things that you normally are able to. So that's how this subject affects the mind and the body.
So what would you say to somebody who says, well, the problem isn't how I'm thinking about money, is that I ain't got no money? I mean, how would you address that?
Well,
for either of you? Well, let's start with Jaqee.
Well, there was a study that was done that showed that once your basic needs are met, that $50,000, probably in this area, 75. So once your basic needs are met, more money didn't add to the quality of your life. So largely, that is a perception that more money will solve the problems. And in those situations, I think it's really important for people to look at what do they value, what's important in their life, and realize that what they enjoy, family, traveling, spending time with friends, money is not going to make a difference. Maybe not with traveling, but those things that really fill us up from inside. And that's just the important thing to take into consideration. Money does not, again, once your needs are met, additional money does not necessarily add to the happiness.
God, so you would not agree with Cyndi Lauper that money changes everything? You might agree with Mace that it's more money, more problems.
I think, more money, more problems can potentially impact that. There are many people that they have plenty of money and aren't happy. Their relationships with their children aren't necessarily good because they may have an enabling situation where they're enabling their kids. So it really does come back to what's important, what do you value, and how is your money serving you versus you serving your money.
Got it. So what are some of the signs that people can know that they have a dysfunctional relationship with money, or recognize that they're in a state of trauma as it relates to money and their relationship to it? What are some of the signs? Let's start with you, Dr. Shepherd, and then Jaqee, if you have any to add.
Yeah, absolutely. Avoidance, again, is huge. Avoidance, even intrusive thoughts. Again, this goes along with trauma. Now, if someone has experienced trauma, they have these flashbacks about the experience. And even the flashbacks can even be altered to where I was just talking with someone recently, and they have flashbacks about an event. And actually, I was listening to the news where a man got bit by a shark. As of course, that's a life-threatening event. But now he's having dreams about being bit in various other areas of his body. The shark did not bite him in. That's because these intrusive thoughts will literally overtake you. And so you can imagine if you have dealt with lack of money, not being able to handle your bills, not be able to provide for your children. I can feel the weight of the parents, and even as people who might be watching right now, you're saying, Dr. Shepherd, I hear you, I feel you, because I want to do better for my children, but I just don't know how. There's shame and guilt that goes along with that. And so that, again, is part of that mental health disorder. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself in a depressed state if you keep yourself there for too long. You know, I was really listening to what Jaqee was saying, and, you know, it's just so amazing how money is the answer to all things. You know, the Bible says that the money answers all things. But then it says the love of money is the root of evil. So money is wonderful. Money is good, and it does answer all things. But also, as she was talking, I was thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And money is not at the base. Guess what it is? Safety and security. And so a lot of people tie in being safe and secure with having a lot of money, but we know that's not true. I mean, we could look at various different presidents. And I don't know how, Dr. Mel, I don't know if you like calling out names on here, but somebody right now is about to go up for indictment. I don't care how much money he got. He don't feel safe right now. And
That's
so again, it's all about safety and security. And that's what people need to know, that it's not about the money. It's about how you treat the money, as Jaqee was saying, so that you feel safe and secure.
That makes sense. Anything to add, Jaqee, in terms of how people know might recognize that they have a dysfunctional relationship with money, signs to look out for?
One of the things I like to say is, if you want to know about your relationship with money, look in your closet. How many pair of black pants do you have? How many pair of shoes do you have that look the same? And think about what was on your mind when you bought those things. Were you stressed? Were you about to interview for a new job? So you had to go out and buy something. Your closet can be informative. And if you know that you're spending when you don't have it, that's one thing. What about sneaking the bags in? If you have a spouse who's like, is that new? If you're sneaking, that might be another determinant that maybe there is a little dysfunction there. We've said it before, if you're avoiding opening your bills and just not putting it away. Another thing may be, and I was listening to someone, they said, I'm about to buy a new car. I know I shouldn't. Now, she probably had the money, but I wanted to dig into, why did she say, I know I shouldn't? That was just one of those things, just to explore a little bit further, to say maybe there is something there.
So it could also be depriving yourself of things that you do need, maybe because you feel unworthy, right?
Absolutely.
Could that be also one of the signs?
Absolutely. If there's, for example, if you enjoy spending time with your friends and your friends say, let's go to dinner, and your immediate response is, I don't have the money. It's just, it's a habit because you're always calculating and you think that you don't have the money. I ran into someone recently who said that she had retired, and the conversation was around, initially she said, I don't have enough money to retire. But she took a step back, met with her financial professional, and discovered she did have enough money to retire. But the story that she had told herself is, I don't have enough. She didn't know what the number was, and she didn't look at the number. She was just telling herself, I don't have enough. And of course, that is validated in our culture.
Right. So speaking of culture, is there a social justice angle to this? How does this perhaps show up differently or in unique ways in Black and Brown communities? Jaqee.
There is absolutely a social component. This shows up in immigrant communities, communities where people are underpaid. It shows up in communities of disability. It shows up in communities of color because we have been underpaid oftentimes. We have been denied access to resources. We have been denied access to loans. So when there is a financial difficulty, and there are, and oftentimes we are on the edge, we're operating and we have one decision to make, and we have to think about that very carefully, which is traumatic in and of itself.
Right.
So as a community, we are at risk. And this is real. I mean, you look at the wealth gap right now. African Americans have 1/6 of the wealth of white Americans.
That's right.
Wow.
There's not a lot of room for financial error. So if you take that into account, it does impact our financial well-being.
Yeah. And you said up front that one of the very first things you said had to do with, we get our attitude about money from our parents. And so our parents' generation was, grew up in segregation in the Jim Crow era oftentimes. And they were then influenced by, their parents and grandparents who might have even grown up in slavery, depending on how far back you go. So yeah, I would imagine there's a lot to untangle and a lot of potential emotional baggage specifically for immigrant and African American communities. So how do you start to work with clients around these issues?
Well, one of the first things that I start with is, what is your money story? I use an assessment so that you can determine, what is your story? Are you a saver? Are you a spender? Then once we look at that, we work on classifying what is the behavior, and to see what are you more at risk for. So if you're money vigilant, that's typically associated with a positive behavior. But if it's keeping you from living the life that you want, then you need to look at some of those things that you can do differently. After we identify the scripts, the behavior, I look at how is it impacting you emotionally and work on that emotional component. Because ultimately you want to get to the financial literacy piece, working with a financial professional for that advice. But if you're still in this trauma brain and reacting or in denial, it's going to be difficult to hear what that financial professional has to say. You won't even get there.
Makes sense. And then
So
Dr. Shepherd,
I like
go ahead.
What do we start with emotion? Oh, no, that's fine.
I was just going to ask Dr. Shepherd, when you're talking then about people who may have crossed over into this being a post-traumatic stress disorder, what are some of the ways that you approach treating PTSD?
Yeah, so when you are treating PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, you're looking to treat the symptoms. So you're looking to treat the anxiety, looking to treat the depression. Those are two of the main things that go along with it. You may even see some hallucinations. Most times it's really not hallucinations, because hallucinations tend to be something that is not quote unquote real. I don't want to get too technical here, but a lot of the stuff is flashbacks, and these things really did happen to people. So you can look at various ways of working through. Medication may be necessary to help to calm down some of the symptoms. Therapy, we mentioned trauma-informed care. And I like what Jaqee was saying, as you're writing your own money narrative. But when you are talking about trauma-informed care, you're actually writing a trauma narrative. And so that is the big piece that goes along with trauma-informed care, writing your own trauma narrative. A lot of folks are not ready to do that. Dr. Shepherd, I want trauma-informed care. And they start doing it. It's like, oh my God, I can't do it. It just because it's that in depth, it's that personal. And so what I encourage the people today, especially as we're preparing for April 18th, if you didn't know what that was, that's when your taxes are due. So we want to make sure that just saying that, I felt somebody get a cold chill. We're helping you today.
It made me think, oh, I'm behind.
Right. Trust me, I'm working on that. This past weekend, I was working on that. And so, we want you to be able to write that trauma narrative, be able to write that or rewrite that story. Let's say it like that. Rewrite that story that you may have been taught from your ancestors. Rewrite that story from what you may have experienced in your neighborhoods. And you have the courage, and you need the courage. You need the strength and support to be able to do that again. So you got to find someone who you trust, who can help you to do that. And in doing so, it is treatable. I want to say that at the end. PTSD is treatable because some people don't think it is. Yeah. It is treatable, and you're able to manage through it, and you're able to live through it.
Wonderful. Wow. I could keep talking with y'all, but we have to get to our audience because I know they're probably putting some stuff on comments, thoughts, questions in the chat. So Bria and Wayne, if y'all could come on back into the studio and let's see what is happening out there.
Dr. MEL.
Okay, we got some good.
All right.
Some good questions. And I'm gonna catch up in a second. Give me 2 seconds. So I'm there? Okay, great. Our first question is from Vaughn Wallace. Hey, Vaughn. You all may have already touched on this. So if so, please feel free to rephrase or add on. But how do you retrain the thinking and value system to course correct that mindset around financial trauma? I know you talked about rewriting your financial history and trauma. Wasn't sure if there was anything else.
Yeah, retraining.
Jonathan, yes, Dr. Shepherd, go ahead.
Yeah. Jonathan's fine. Yeah, but retrain the brain. First of all, it is hard because first of all, people don't like change, so we just have to accept that. But if you are going to change, you have got to first of all have the courage to do it, and then find somebody who's going to help you stay accountable. If you have the courage and you find someone to help you to be accountable, you are already well on your way. Then you have to start filling in those other nuances so that you can rewrite that story. I'll just stop there, but I think that those two pieces are very important in retraining your brain.
Jaqee, anything to add?
Yeah, just to add on to what Jonathan said is, first of all, there's the recognition that the story that you've been living may not be the story now. It may not be your story. So the first step to change is recognizing, what is your story? Mm-hmm. Is that true? Are you living based on what your parents were doing and their beliefs were formed during the Depression or formed during a war? So understand what your story is and how it's showing up in your life. That's the first step. So if you want something different, it's like, oh, I'm doing that because it's a habit. That is related to this story that I've told myself. This is my new reality. And because I'm calm, I've settled down, I can adhere to my budget or my spending plan that I was able to develop from that place of groundedness.
Great. Thank you. All right. What else do we have out there?
Second question coming in. And that question is from Margaret. I can't pronounce your last name, Margaret. Apologize. How can people learn about their finances and improve their financial literacy if they don't learn it from their family? It doesn't seem to be taught in school.
Good question.
That is a great question. And, we're taught how to read, we're taught how to write, but we're not taught about money. So there are a number of ways that you can learn about it. There's a great website. The Consumer Protection Bureau has basic financial information that starts with what's an asset, what's a liability. There are also financial professionals out there that can support that learning. Another good website where there's information is is America Saves. They have basic financial literacy. So the first step is, if you want to learn, there are many places out there where you can go. That is one of the things that I do, is I help people, and I teach financial literacy, and I teach it in a way that eliminates shame and guilt, that makes it more accessible and more sustainable. So I just encourage you to go online, Google, learn about finances, and you'll see a number of things come up.
Right. And what I'm hearing is you can have all the information in the world, but if your emotion and your feeling nature around money is off, you can't really put those things into practice, is what I'm hearing as well. So, but those are great great references in terms of places to start around financial literacy. Thanks, Jaqee. All
Yeah, it's
right.
good to procrastinate. It's easy to procrastinate about developing that spending plan when you're not in a grounded state. So thanks for adding that.
Our next question, thank you for that answer. Our next question comes from Tracy Walls. How do you get people to accept the fact that it is okay to succeed? I remember growing up that each generation should achieve one step further than the generation before. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, because people are struggling with that right now, honestly. There are people who I even work with, consult with, and they say, Shepherd, I'm doing better than what I had expected and what my colleagues are doing. I felt it, to be honest with you, where COVID-19 shut down a lot of people. It actually revived me. It quickens things within me, as far as fighting for my own rights. As a Black man, and other, you all were touching on a couple of topics earlier, and I wanted to jump in, but I said, no, let me not do it, because when you talk about the disparities that we see in our veterans, it has nothing to do with who's in power. It's racism. I mean, that is one word, racism, and racism is real. It is a public health concern. And it's one of the major reasons why we have financial trauma in our lives today as Black people, because we have not been treated fairly. So,
Amen.
When people want to say, I'm ashamed of, what's happening to me, I tell them, I said, there's nothing to be ashamed about. You survived the worst of times, which we all have done, and you're making something great out of it. People who tend to make themselves lesser than what they really are, I get a little concerned about them. And again, I'm speaking about myself. I had to grow up in this area, because it told me that their self-esteem may have had an issue. And so what we learn sometimes is that we learn to dumb down ourselves so we can be on par with other folks. Who told you that? You guys want to be on par with everybody. You're your own person. You're your own man. You're your own woman. You need to be able to walk in there and be confident about that. I'm going to end right here, but I was thinking literally just today, even as I am in the executive coaching sessions, that there's really a timeline, if you would, where incompetency and cockiness are on the both ends of that timeline. You can be incompetent, you can be competent, and then confident, and then cocky. I hope nobody out there is incompetent, and I hope you're not cocky, but you define yourself somewhere over there by competent and confident. So don't let these people tell you that you need to be ashamed of your success. We want you to succeed. We need you to succeed.
That wonderfully said. And I also want to throw in too that, the idea that every generation should do better than the last, we need to also keep in mind that this is actually the first generation that economically might not do better than the last, right? Because of, because of a lot of different forces, technology displacing jobs, a lot of different forces. And so it's important, as you mentioned, not to link your self-esteem to your earning power, right? Because it just might not have any correlate. But there are many other things about you, as Dr. Shepherd was saying, that you can use to draw your self-esteem from. So,
and it's not Instagram. For real.
There you go.
Oh, really?
Look,
You
So-
should.
that's all.
So we
It
have
is.
another question from Mario James Frazier. What are some of the coping mechanisms when dealing with financial stresses?
Ooh, good question.
Well, that's where some of the behaviors come in, and it's going to be different for everybody. It may be overspending. It may be, I've mentioned hoarding. It may be not spending when you should be spending. So it's that emotional response. So your money habits are really a way of calming your nervous system. And it's the denial, the coping. So I'm worried about money, so I'm not going to look at it. It's just going to be okay. And hoping that it goes away.
And I think he was asking too, what are some things that people can do in terms of coping better with if they're exhibiting some of those behaviors?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick and tell you what works for me. So if I'm about to buy something, I need to go to sleep on it. Some of us we are impulsive buyers. If it's still on Jonathan's brain the next day or 2 days later, then it's probably meant for me to buy. But if it's gone and I just saw that nice sweater, I'm wearing a sweater right now. That's why I'm using it, and I know that man, that thing disappeared. I can't find it nowhere. I was supposed to have it. And I say that because so many of us spend money on stuff that we don't need. That's why, Jackie, when you said that, just like you coming from me talking about how many black pair of pants I have in my closet. Man,
Yikes.
it's like, get out my closet. So honestly, we need to take a break. We need to take a breath, breathe, so that we can reduce that anxiety and calm ourselves down before we make purchases, before we make some decisions that literally could be life altering, just because we were too impulsive to even sit down to figure out, is this something that I really need or not?
Right. We're actually going to. Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
Well, I'm just going to add, it's not the need, it's something else. Maybe you're stressed out about something else, and that sweater that you're going to buy is making you feel better. So calming down, taking a walk, being with friends, those may be replacements for the impulse shopping.
Right. And any of the things that help you with stress management. So mindfulness, meditation, prayer, yoga.
I think it is what is it? What's when the moon is in the wrong house? I think
talking
that's
about
today.
retrograde, Mars and retrograde.
Yeah, Mercury's in retrograde. That's the house of everything. She was saying mindfulness, any of the things that will help you calm yourself in prayer. So I'm going to take over at this point. We have another question, and Dr. Mel is going to come right back in here because she knows.
I'm back.
You
pulled a me.
Go ahead with the mindfulness, Dr. Mel. Go ahead. Mindfulness.
I was saying we're actually going to be doing a show on mindfulness at some point in the near future. But anything that helps to calm your nervous center and center yourself. So whether it's mindfulness, prayer, meditation, taking a long walk, like Jackie said, or socializing, picking up your guitar, your violin, knitting, crocheting, swimming, whatever, yoga, any of those things that help to center you will be helpful before you use money to try to soothe whatever the issue is.
Yes.
I agree. So we have a chance for one more question, and it comes from Yvonne Smith, our super
Hi, Yvonne.
listener. She says, how does coming together as a family unit can help the finances? How does that happen?
That's a great question. And also too, especially if it's generationally or in the culture of your family. So Jackie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, because kids are learning about money from their families. And as a family, you can come up with your budget. And it's based on values, what's important to everybody. So all the members of the family have an opportunity to make decisions around how this pot of money, who's earning, and quite frankly, I don't think a child is too young to learn about it. I mean, I had a piggy bank, and my first experience in budgeting happened when I was about 7 years old. And I was given money to go to the fair, and I only had so much money. So I had to plan how that money was going to be used.
All
My
right.
rides, my games, my food. That was my first lesson in budgeting.
All
So
right.
as a family, your children have an opportunity to learn that. And if they see mom and dad participating in the financial discussion, that's how they're going to learn.
All right, Dr.
Great
Mel.
points. Well, thank you all so much. We have learned so much. I think this was a timely topic because when we don't deal with our financial trauma and our relationships with money, that then affects us on a psychological basis and ultimately a physical basis, like Dr. Shepherd outlined in terms of raising our blood pressure and putting us at risk for all kinds of chronic diseases. So I thought it was a wonderful way that you all brought out information about this really important topic. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Jonathan Shepherd and Jaqee Cooke. And of course, thank you to my wonderful co-hosts who are bringing in those great questions from the audience. Y'all are awesome. And as always, I have to remind my Be Health Empowered family, wherever you're listening, that there's a special research study that Howard University is asking me to invite you to participate in. It's called the COVID Resilience Research Study. It's voluntary to participate, but all you have to do is fill out 2 surveys that take just a few minutes to do, and you can be compensated $100 for your time. So if you have any interest in finding out more, please reach out to Dana Harvey. That's Dana. Her email is danaharveyresearch@gmail.com. That's Dana, D-A-N-A, Harvey, H-A-R-V-E-Y, research@gmail.com. That's it for us, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a powerful week, my Be Health Empowered family. And remember, be wise, be well, and be health empowered. Thanks so much for tuning in.
So I guess I should thank the Robinsons. They invited me. They still don't know. I hooked up with Dave 3 days ago. He'll start coughing tomorrow. And I bet in 10 days he'll be on a ventilator. Now his wife, she's not vaccinated because she thinks it'll prevent her from being pregnant. But what they don't know is that I can decrease sperm count. Sorry, Dave. Good luck with that.